With major strikes on Tyre today, Israel pushing at the limits of what both its main enemy and its main ally are prepared to tolerate. A brief but intense re-escalation ended yesterday, with Iran saying Israel had now to stop its attacks on Lebanon. Israel aware too that the US president wants to smooth the path to his putative impending agreement with Iran. But Israel's prime minister aware of the need domestically to show he's still able to hit Hezbollah. Israel's military ordering a mass evacuation for Tyre and its surrounding areas, including for the first time the Christian quarter, which Israel says has now been infiltrated by Hezbollah fighters.
It is home to thousands of civilians, including families, children and the elderly, and preserves a rich cultural, historical and religious heritage that spans many centuries. Any attack or destruction of this neighbourhood would constitute a humanitarian catastrophe.
Tens of thousands now fleeing their homes again. Since March, more than 1 million people have registered as displaced.
After the warnings in Tyre, we left. We picked up and left. Where should we go? There is nowhere to go. We'll end up in the streets.
We left to be reassured and safe. It's not fear, but one cares about family and dignity. We don't know where we're going.
Further south, more Israeli strikes on Shia villages. Israel saying too that an armed man crossed into its territory from Lebanon and was shot dead. For Israelis in the north, little faith in what remains a nominal ceasefire.
I simply don't believe in it. I think we need to complete this mission to the end and achieve long-term peace. Long-term peace for the residents of the north and, by the way, for the entire state of Israel.
Israel's army chief today saying there was a plan for a much broader strike on Iran, one that remains on the table, seemingly confirming reports in Israel that President Trump spiked it at the last minute, that Prime Minister Netanyahu complied.
I think the main accusation is that he has somehow outsourced Israel's freedom of action and that Israel is being constrained by America. You know, all joking aside about Trump as a mediator, what he really has been doing quite a bit more effectively than the United Nations is constraining Israel when Israel doesn't want to be constrained.
But the US president, who last night gave his now customary 2 to 3 day horizon for an agreement with Iran, also constrained by the unpredictable events of the war he launched. Posting on social media this evening, I have just been informed by our great military that last night the Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters while patrolling over the Strait of Hormuz. There were 2 pilots involved, both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must, of necessity, respond to this attack. The US military said the helicopter crew were rescued from the strait by an unmanned sea drone. The incident coming at the same time as reports of a quiet increase in traffic through the strait, tankers bearing Gulf oil and gas with transponders turned off. Such progress, though, at best uncertain and contingent, with the US president now promising to strike Iran and Israel's prime minister determined to show his freedom to keep striking Hezbollah.
Well, let's go to our US editor, Anushka Astana. Anushka, everyone in Iran is wondering what Trump means by responding to the downing of this helicopter. Is it any clearer where you are?
Well, I suspect he means something pretty limited. Don't get me wrong, this is a really worrying thing to happen. We're in the middle of a very shaky ceasefire. This sounds like direct fire from the Iranians onto a US helicopter, and it sounds like the president himself saying that he is going to retaliate. But I think it is important to put it in the context of the broader mood music. You know, the president said he had just been informed about this, but actually he knew about it last night. The reason I know that is that he came out to speak to reporters after going to a Knicks basketball game in New York, and at one point he was asked about it and he said the pilots are okay, we'll give you more information tomorrow. But what was interesting was that was a 15-minute session with journalists. The question came 12 minutes in. For the entire first half of that event, Trump was instead talking about Washington DC and how beautiful it had become under his presidency. He was talking about the $13 million upgrade of the reflecting pool behind me. He was talking about the fountains that were coming up. It didn't sound like this was at the forefront of his mind. In fact, only halfway through did he come to Iran, and again, positive mood music. He said we could have a deal within 2 or 3 days, even after he knew about that helicopter. So look, I think he thinks that he needs to respond, but he wants this to be over, not least because right here in America, they're getting ready for the World Cup.
Indeed, and an Iranian team is prepping for that World Cup and getting ready to enter the country.
Yeah, an Iranian team that has already faced a lot of controversy. They're prepping for the World Cup, not here, but in the neighbouring host, Mexico, because the Americans didn't want them to be based in the US. Only a few days ago did we find out that the players would get visas to cross the border. They're in Group G. They've got games in LA next week, and they've been told their support staff might not be able to come with them. Meanwhile, their fans have just been told their allocations won't stand. A Somali referee has been told he can't come in. And talk about dynamic pricing, Chris. You need a spare $1,000 to go to a game. That's not even mentioning the car park pricing. But look, everyone is getting excited for all that. There's a huge fan zone being erected further down the mall, just like all over America. And even though football fans might not always be in the games, they're certainly getting ready to watch them.
Thanks, Anushka. Well, since the US and Israel began the war in February, Gulf states have been caught in the middle, with civilian infrastructure and US military bases on their soil struck by Iran. Earlier, I spoke to Dr. Dania Thafer, the executive director of the Gulf International Forum, who's based in Doha, and I asked her how the Gulf nations see the latest developments in this conflict.
From the perspective of the Gulf states, just recently having the exchange of fire between the Israelis and the Iranians already raises concerns. And let's not forget that just within a week, a few Gulf states have received attacks. Oman has been attacked, not a lot know about it. Kuwait has been attacked quite aggressively, and so has Bahrain. So they're still feeling the brunt of this war. So they're very nervous. The stakes are high, and they're hoping for a deal to come through.
Right, so what does this mean for the equation around escalation dominance?
Well, that's a good question. So escalation dominance is not something that the Gulf states are very happy about, because from the Iranian perspective, they have escalation dominance when it comes to the Gulf region more properly, more so than they do have with direct confrontation with Israel. And that puts the Gulf states in a very precarious situation, because the Iranians can escalate horizontally by bringing in the Houthi card, which they did sort of bring it in when it comes to Israel more properly, but it hasn't affected the Gulf states as of yet in a tangible way. And also the Gulf states are being held hostage in this war. And so anytime there's an escalation, the risk increases for the Gulf states. And Iran's asymmetric strategy is to raise the cost, economically speaking, on the international community through attacking the Gulf states and blockading the Strait of Hormuz.
The feeling here amongst the Iranian government and its supporting politicians is that they feel increasingly confident that they have established a sort of a new rule, if you like, in the region, that if Israel were to hit Beirut, then they will be able to hit Israel, and that the Americans clearly don't want that, and that makes them feel like they're in control. Where does that, do you think that is how the Gulf states will see it as well, that Iran has actually had a boost from what has happened over the last 2 days?
I think the Gulf states in general worry that Iran has felt a boost through this whole war, because obviously this war has been very costly for the Gulf states, extremely costly for many states and the global economy, especially the global south. So I think that Iran actually feels quite confident in its position and is willing to tolerate a high degree of pain that most countries will not, including the Gulf states.
The odd thing about this, though, is that Iran seems to be tolerating what is going on in southern Lebanon. Is that going to be the new normal, that Iran will continue to tolerate this until it doesn't?
Well, I agree with you. Iran did not react to Israel attacking Lebanon. We're talking about more than 3,000 Lebanese have died in this war at the hands of Israeli attacks, but also the fact that Iran has maintained this ceasefire for a month and a half while the people of Lebanon have been dying, until the Hezbollah stronghold in the southern suburbs of Beirut were at risk. Therefore, I think it really shows that this war isn't about Lebanon or the Lebanese people. This war is about Iran's forward strategy and maintaining its Hezbollah stronghold.
Dania Thafer, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.